writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspirations for growing your self-publishing business. We're your hosts. I'm Vanessa, author engagement specialist.
And I'm Laura, Kobo Writing Life's author engagement manager.
Today, we had on a Canadian rom-com author, Barbara Kellyn. Barbara is often called the Queen of Banter, and she has published 5 romantic comedy novels and a Christmas novella. Barbara's MO is writing funny, steamy stories about likable heroines worth rooting for and alluring heroes worth the trouble of falling for.
We talked to Barbara all about her experience with the Kobo Originals Holiday Novella Contest, her winning novella Polar Opposites, and her love of romance novels. We also talked to Jessica Khadoo from the Kobo Originals team about the creation of the contest, what went on behind the scenes, and what upcoming projects we should be on the lookout for. Okay, today we're here with Barbara Kellyn, winner of the Kobo Originals Holiday Romance Contest. Barbara, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm based in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm a Winnipeg writer. I've been a writer all my life, but interestingly, this was the first writing contest I've ever entered. So needless to say, I was super excited to get the news that I won. I've been writing romance. I write rom-coms. That's my jam. I've written 5 novels, and including Polar Opposites, 2 novellas as well.
Just to talk a little bit more about you as an author and as a writer, have you always enjoyed writing? And can you tell us a little bit about your work as an indie author so far?
Sure. Like a little bit about my writing journey itself, Yes. I was telling Terrence, I think I sort of fell in love with storytelling at a really early age. Like a lot of kids, I grew up reading like Judy Blume books, Nancy Drew, that sort of thing. So it's sort of like planted a seed in me at an early age that I could maybe one day be a storyteller too. I was always creative. I was writing little stories, that sort of thing. But to write a book seemed like something that was like far away. That was a dream maybe, but nothing that was like within my reach. So I sort of put that idea away for a long time. I worked as a copywriter. I've always worked with words and written for a living. But it wasn't until I was in my late 30s and I picked up a rom-com book by an author named Jennifer Cruzy. And it was like a light bulb moment. I don't know how else to explain it. It was like the light went on and it was like, you could write this kind of stuff. It's funny, it's sexy, it's sort of fast paced, good characters. And it's like, you could do this too. So I thought, okay, I'll set myself a goal. I'm very deadline oriented. So I set myself a goal. I'm going to finish this book and I'm going to send it out and I'm going to get it published by the time I'm 40. Like, how naive is that, right? So not knowing anything about how to write a novel or structure or anything along those lines, I picked up a book by the founder of NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing Month, about how to write a novel in 30 days. I mean, again, the naivety continues, right? So I wrote a novel during National Novel Writing Month, which was crazy, 50,000 words in 30 days. But it turned out great. And I think it got the juices flowing in me that I could write a book. So did some edits on it afterwards and then just started sending it out on query, which is insane. Like I've never written a book before, but I love this idea and I love the characters. And of course, had to get 50, 60 rejections that came back. It was all a learning experience, really. But then it found its way into the hands of an editor who loved it. And she really got me. She got my writing style. And before I knew it, I had a publishing contract before I was 40 years old, like I dreamed of. It was a small publishing house. It was great. They were wonderful to work with. And it boosted my confidence so much. I told myself that book was not a fluke. I'm going to do it again next year. And I wrote 2 books with them and published 2 books with them. And that really got my writing career off the ground.
Oh my gosh, I love that story. I love it for so many reasons. First is that, you knew as a young child that this is something that you loved, but tabled it a little bit, but it doesn't, with writing, it doesn't matter how old or young you are.
Right.
It's all about storytelling. And I think that's so inspirational that, you tabled it for a bit, but then we're inspired to do it again. And just by picking up a book and being inspired by somebody else's writing, which is,
to me, it's
I
so
think,
funny to look back that it was just the right time in my life to do it. I think I was never really inspired to write a novel before. It was maybe played with it in the back of my mind, but it hit me like literally when I say it's a light bulb moment, it really was saying, you have to do this and you can do this.
for sure. And NaNoWriMo is like the perfect time to do it, right? There's so many authors who are embarking on that journey in that month. And 50,000 words in a month is a lot of words. It's a lot of work. But I don't know. And we'll kind of talk about this maybe a little bit later on. But sometimes people work really well in tight crunches and in tight parameters and something to keep them focused with an end date. So I think that makes total sense to me, and love the fact that you shopped it around and got it published for your first story, which is awesome because I know a lot of people go the other route, which is self-publishing. And that's pretty inspirational that, as long as you put your mind to it and you put your effort to it, it can work out.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it still seems like it's sort of amazing the way that things just happened. Again, I'm a big believer in signs, and I think it was just a sign that this is what you're meant to be doing, and you're going in the right direction, and just keep going. So, that was great. So I did 2 books with the publishing house. And then 2 sort of strange things happened. The publishing house, like I said, they were pretty small. They were bought out by a bigger company, and their interest was not necessarily in the kind of books that I was interested in doing. So I was sort of at a crossroads, and they gave me the choice. Do you want to have your rights back and self-publish if you want, or shop it around somewhere else? Or I could stay with them. But I knew that their heart wasn't in the place my heart was, right? So it didn't make sense. So I had the rights back, and then I ended up going the indie author route. So then I did 3 more books on my own, and the novella that I mentioned.
That's awesome. Again, very inspirational to also know that like it's okay to ask for your rights back and follow your gut and your instincts, and knowing yourself as a writer and knowing that you want to put or trust your works with a publisher, an editor who really understand you and can bring the best out of your book is something that's, I think, a lot of people can probably relate to, and have a lot of situations where, there's been a shift and now they need to kind of rethink where they want to go with their writing career and how they want to handle it. And taking on self-publishing is a big feat to kind of go from the switch of being traditionally published to then taking all of that responsibility on yourself. So very inspirational, very cool.
Oh, that's great. To me, it was important just to be able to get my work out there, to find an audience, and rather than sit back and wait for it to happen, for lightning to strike twice. I thought, you know what, I've got the power to do it. There's a lot of resources out there for indie authors. There's a great indie author community. And so I really relied on them quite a bit to sort of to learn as I went along. I'm still learning as I'm going along. So it was right for me. I'm really happy with that decision.
What would you say the biggest thing you've learned has been so far in the indie author journey? Because, like Jess said, there's so much going on in the self-publishing world, and it can be a bit intimidating to enter it for the first time. And it's kind of like information overload.
For sure. The biggest thing I've learned after the story is written, the main thing is really, you focus on your work, I think, and stay true to yourself and stay true to what your story is. I think a lot of indie authors would agree that social media is a lot of work. It's a lot. You have to do it constantly. You have to have a presence out there in order to build a reader base. So you need to get the word out yourself. It's really up to you. But it's so rewarding, though, once you start getting feedback from readers, and the content sort of treats itself sometimes, right? When you get wonderful reviews back, or people are happy to share your work with others. But I would say definitely it is a lot of work. Like, people are not kidding when they say it's a lot of work to be an indie author. I mean, just again, just social media alone is almost a full-time job. It really is. So I think it's important to remember the essence of why you do what you do and what you do, which is you're a storyteller. So focus on your work, primarily, and then focus on the other stuff. The other stuff's important too, but you really want to put out a product that you're really proud of. So I think that always comes first.
That's a really great tip, to kind of just like compartmentalize and don't think about the whole endeavor all at once, because that can definitely be overwhelming. But like you said, you're a story writer, you're a storyteller, that comes first, and then focus on that. And then the other things can kind of fall into place afterward. Easier said than done, I'm sure.
Right. And social media is a form of storytelling, really, right? It's just a different form of it. So if you think of things that way, it's not like it has to be a chore. It can be really fun too.
What drew you to the Kobo Originals contest specifically?
I'm a big believer in signs. What happened was this summer, I've had a crazy work year. It's been just very, very busy, very chaotic, and I have not been writing this year at all. And then a friend tagged me in Kobo's Instagram post about the contest and said, "You have to do this. This is you. This is right up your alley." It was a contest for Canadian authors. It was rom-com genre. It was holiday. I mean, anyone who knows me knows how much I love Christmas, and I'm all about the holidays. So I said, okay, well, this is interesting. But I sort of put the idea away for a couple of days, but it kept coming back to me. No, you have to do this. This was made for you to do. So I started with really no story idea or anything. I just pulled out my notebook and looked for other ideas that maybe little scribblings I'd done over the years, but really just started from scratch and thought, you know what, I can do this. Again, it's a 2-month deadline. That seems doable. How hard can that be? So wrote a story over the summertime, and I thought, you know what, this was a good exercise. And if nothing else comes from it, it was good for me to get back into writing again. And it certainly served that purpose for me. I was really excited about writing again, and I committed to doing it, and that's what I needed to do. It was great. It was the right opportunity at the right time, I think.
I love hearing that. And we're so glad you submitted, and we're so glad that it's stuck in your head.
Oh, good. Yeah, it certainly did. Yeah. It was like I couldn't ignore the signs. The signs were all there, like, you have to do this. And it wasn't like I was thinking, oh, I'm going to win. I'm going to win. It was just a good exercise for me creatively to get back into writing again and sort of shaking off any doubts or, that kind of thing. And it was great. I thought, nothing comes from it. I'm really proud of myself for just submitting and meeting that deadline and getting it done.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point too, is even though if you didn't end up winning, it's the idea that at the end of this, you would have a story, absolutely. Right? Yeah.
I was really happy with it. And I thought, again, if nothing comes of it, I was proud enough that I would probably put it out on my own, I think. But I think that what happened, the outcome was even better than I expected. So yeah, I'm over the moon about having won the contest.
And can you tell us a little bit about your winning novella, Polar Opposites, for people who don't know about it?
Sure. It's about an American journalist and a Canadian photographer who meet on an assignment in the polar bear capital of the world. For those that don't know, that's in Churchill, Manitoba, in my home province. It's definitely an opposites attract story, sort of what happens when oil meets water. They're thrown together on assignment, and it's Christmas time and magic happens.
Perfect description of it, for sure. So as you kind of said, you heard about the contest and sat with it for a little bit and just kept kind of coming and popping back into your mind. So where did the idea for Polar Opposites come from? Did you already have it in mind and it was something kind of living back there for a bit, or was it sparked by the contest?
It was totally sparked by the contest. I had really no idea. I have sort of backtrack a little bit. It had to do with the novella process for me. I've written one novella before recently, and doing it is so different from writing a novel that you have to be so concise in your storytelling. So I had to have an idea that I knew I could do in 20,000 words and build a relationship with a couple in 20,000 words. So obviously, for me, a story that has a lot of friction goes really fast, and that works well for the novella structure for me. So my idea really started with enemies to lovers. So I started with my trope and then built it from there. And I thought, okay, we've got two people that don't like each other. We've got to get them together. Great. Then I thought about the setting. I thought because it was a contest for Canadian authors, this was a really cool chance to focus on something Canadian. And being in Manitoba, we have a lot of snow at Christmas time. It's a very Christmassy kind of place, but a lot of places have snow. So what's so special about that? So I thought about it a little bit more and thought, well, one thing Manitoba has that nowhere else in Canada has is we've got polar bears. We're the polar bear capital of the world, and that's very unique. It's internationally renowned, in fact. So I thought this would be really cool for a story. Okay, I can work with this. And I thought, okay, to make it interesting, I'll make one of the main characters American, sort of a fish out of water story. He comes in, doesn't really know much about Canada or the polar bears or anything. Put her together with a Canadian counterpart. And so she's American, he's Canadian. Automatically, there's some natural friction there and the sort of friendly rivalry between the two countries. There's a lot that the two of them can riff on. So yeah, it just sort of built itself up from there. And then like different layers of the story started coming out. And it was really fun to do. It wasn't like anything I've ever written before.
Amazing. And I also have to say, Polar Opposites, such a perfect title. Really,
it's so good.
It fits in all the ways that we're hoping it to fit in. Like, it's a great title. How did you come up with the title? Did it just scream at you? Do you workshop
it totally did, but it's so funny. I'm one of those authors that I can't name a project just like draft one. I can't name a project just like Christmas rom-com Kobo or something like it. I have to have it. It has to have a personality. It has to have a birth name. So, I played with a few things for a while and then boom, it just popped up and it was like, oh, this is perfect. This is perfect. So yeah, I was really happy with it. And also I love puns. I love wordplay. And so, yeah, I knew as soon as I hit on that one, I said, oh yeah, it's Polar Opposite.
And the genre loves puns and wordplay too. So
yeah, you got it
right on in there.
Right.
And did you have a few different ideas to choose from, or was this always just like the one story that you were going with?
I think it was always the one story. Once I started it, nothing else sort of tempted me to write something else. I knew I was on the right path. It's funny though, before I hit on the Churchill idea, I had an idea about something, the polar bear plunge or something. And in my notes, I thought, oh, okay, well, that's kind of interesting, but how do I build that friction around that? And I like to sort of, the tension to be there and competitive. And I didn't think that was it, but maybe that sort of sparked the idea of the polar bears. So it's, I never throw out anything in your notebooks because you just never know when it might spark something subconsciously.
That's such a good tip to always save everything.
Absolutely.
Valuable advice for sure.
Absolutely.
Because maybe Polar Plunge will come back for a sequel.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that.
That's right.
So I know we just talked about you are based in Manitoba. Churchill, Manitoba is where this story takes place, a very unique location. And have you been there before?
I haven't been there before. It's totally on my bucket list. I work in communications and had the pleasure of doing some work for the town of Churchill. I did their newsletter for about a year and a half, a few years back, and got to know some of the people that work there. I've had lots of friends who've been to Churchill, and Churchill is really a source of pride for all Manitobans, and the polar bears are really part of our culture. Even here in Winnipeg, we've got a huge permanent exhibit at our zoo called Journey to Churchill. It's a polar bear rehabilitation center. And even our local basketball team, they're called the Sea Bears, and their mascot's name is Churchill. He's a polar bear. So, I mean, we've got polar bears all over the place, but it's nothing like actually being there. So actually, after having written this book, I want to go now more than ever. I can't wait. It's so unique. It's such a unique place.
I also want to go after reading the books. So.
Laura, we're going to get together, okay?
Yes. Yeah. We should get Kobo to send us somehow. We're going to make that happen.
Yeah, a Kobo excursion. I would love that. And it sounds also like Churchill, you've got some deeper connections to Churchill. I didn't know about the newsletter. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Really great tidbit, because that was something that really stood out to me with your novella was the characters were so rich, not just our two main characters in Zora and Luke, but all of your side characters. They felt very, I don't know, they just represented the community. Like I felt like when I was reading it, I could see it, I could visualize it, I could totally feel all these different characters being brought together for various reasons, because of the holidays, because of the polar bears. Right. It was just like such a quick way that you were able to establish that connection to the place, to the polar bears, and to each of the characters. And doing that in 20,000 words is really difficult to do. So it makes a lot more sense to know that you had this like deeper connection to Churchill, and having that little extra insight of doing the newsletter really opens that up, and you can see it in the story for sure.
And I wanted to feel like real. Although it's a fictional story and a fictionalized version of Churchill, it's still a very real place, and it's facing some of the challenges that are mentioned in the book. So I think creating characters in a small town is always an awesome way to bring out the personality of the town itself. I love a small town romance. I've written small town romance. I love reading small town romance, and it's always the characters and that bring out the quirkiness and the personality of the setting. So I'm really glad that that really resonated with you.
For sure. So we talked a little bit about writing this novella, and the fact that you have written 2 novellas. Can you just discuss a little bit more about your writing process for a novella? Was it difficult to try and write in the shorter format with some set parameters in terms of content, in terms of word count, and sort of the overarching theme of this contest?
Mm-hmm. I think my process in writing a novella is pretty much the same as writing a novel. You've still got sort of the same kind of beats throughout that when you're planning what your story structure is, but it's just more intense. You don't have the luxury of doing a lot of backstory on the characters or even a lot of details. I think one thing that I appreciate when I'm reading a novella is that the author lets me fill in some of those blanks on my own. I like using my imagination on stories. So it's important to move from A to B to C, quite quickly and keep things moving. But at the same time, your most important thing you need to accomplish is getting these 2 people together in a romance novella, in a shorter amount of words. So you can't lose focus on what your story is about. There's no room for a lot of subplots or anything that's really fun to play with in a novel. So you're still taking the same route. You're just getting there quicker when you're writing a novella. So that was the same thing when I was writing this one. I knew I had these 2 characters. I knew I needed them to get together by the end of the book. What happened in between, I let them take me on that journey. Even my characters, I don't sketch them out a lot when I'm writing a book. I have very loose character sketches in my mind, maybe 2 or 3 traits for each. But I let them tell the story and, let them tell me about their personalities. And so that way, when I'm writing, it's a great ride for me, too. I have a lot of fun and it surprises me along the way, which is great. I really enjoy that.
Was there anything that you had in the story originally that you had to cut for space?
I don't think so.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think everything, actually, you know what? It was nice. I had the opportunity to go back and add a little bit more to the story. And that led me add in some more details that I had previously thought, okay, there's no room, or there's no time, and there's no room to tell this. So it was kind of nice to be able to go back and sort of say, okay, now I'd like to add extra layers onto things, which is really nice. And I mean, that's a real treat and a real indulgence when you're writing a novella. Sometimes you don't get to go back and do those things a little bit, but I think it deepens the connections between the characters in the story, and it paints more of a picture of what the setting is like. So I know I'm really happy with how it turned out.
Yeah, you had the opposite problem. You got to add more in, so that's
I had
great.
the opposite problem. Yeah, it's a nice problem to have, let me tell you.
For sure. And you talked a little bit about how Zora and Luke are kind of our enemies to lovers couple. Were there any other tropes that you wanted to fit in specifically? And do you have any favorite romance tropes as a reader?
Ooh, they're a little bit of everything. I mean, they're grumpy sunshine for sure, which is always fun. One thing I really liked about it is that the Canadians stereotypically are usually the nice guys, and not so much this time. So that was really fun to write. Canadian, that was the grumpy one. That was great. He comes off as arrogant, and I think even Jessica, you said, yeah, I didn't really like him at first.
Yeah, which I love that I didn't like him at first. At first, when I first read it, I was like, is this our guy? Is this our guy? Or is there someone else showing up?
Yeah, enemies to lovers.
That's right. So that was really fun to write because it wasn't like the polite Mr. Nice Guy Canadian. So I thought that was really fun. What other tropes? I'm a real sucker for workplace romance. I love workplace romance, and it's a theme in some of my other stories, just based on my past professional lives. There's always good material you can pull from the workplace, right? And always like natural tensions and that sort of thing. It's great. And again, like small town, like we talked about, I love small town romance, and having it set in a rural setting like Churchill, which is very unique, but still some of those same things come out, like quirky people in town, and there's the small bar you hang out at, that kind of thing. So I think that's really fun. So I think there's a bunch of real neat tropes in this story. Oh, well, another one of my favorite tropes, and I think it comes out in this, is found family. I think found family is a trope that doesn't get a lot of spotlight on it, but I think it's something that I found, it just comes up in my books. It's the people around you. It's the small community that takes you in. It's your friends that surround you. Yeah, and I think that's a really cool trope that I'd like to write a little bit more down the road as well.
So as we were talking about Zora and Luke, and that, they first meet each other and they've got a little bit of a rivalry going on. They've got the Canadian versus American thing going on. And like you said, that was a really great way for you to set up sort of the structure of your story. And that, okay, they start off as rivals. They have to eventually, unite and be together. And the way that you were able to do that by creating tension was not only like in the situations that you put them in, but also in the dialogue. And there's a lot of dialogue in this story. And one of the things that I loved about this story was all of your dialogue. And it really showed each character, and not just of our main characters, but like you said, your small town characters, where that's the way you kind of show their personality off, and in a more interesting way than just having it all blurted out in one big long paragraph, right? Do you have any tips for authors who might struggle with creating witty, sort of snappy dialogue that helps the story flow?
I think for me, again, this just works for me, is I go back to the books and movies where I love dialogue. Like I write rom-com, that's what I do, and I love to watch rom-coms. And you think about some of the favorite rom-com movies that have come out, and I know why I go back to Sandra Bullock, but maybe because she's so prolific in the genre. But you think about, The Proposal with Ryan Reynolds and 2 Weeks Notice with Hugh Grant. I mean, think about the dialogue in that movie. And both those movies are so sharp. The banter is so quick, and so there's so much like simmering tension underneath. And that's the stuff I love to write, and I love to get that across. So I would say if somebody wants to learn how to do dialogue, watch movies or read books that have, that kind of banter and that sharp, witty dialogue. I mean, movies have been like that going back to Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. I mean, those kind of movies, right? I mean, watch those and sort of study the dialogue and how it works, and then you get a rhythm for it, and then it just comes out. For me personally, it just comes out in words because I hear it in my head and I can see it in my head like a movie. So the things that I enjoy consuming as a reader and a watcher are the things that I write.
That's a great point. Lots of inspiration there too. And also, I think the idea of watching a movie or taking a deeper look at the movies that you like that have dialogue that really goes, that is really handy because you're not only like reading, it takes place in your head, right? Or if you're in an audiobook, you might get a little bit more sense. But I always remember in some of my creative writing courses where if you're writing dialogue, say it out loud, read it out loud, because as soon as you do that, then you'll hear the natural sort of language that you would use if you were talking to somebody versus writing on page. Yeah. So I think the idea of actually watching it in a movie helps with that too, because you're seeing how these actors deliver these lines in a way that's a little bit more realistic than just writing words on the page, which can be difficult to kind of bridge that gap.
Absolutely. And dialogue, like sometimes I'll get it right away. I'll write something, I'll go, oh, that's really funny, or that's really great. And sometimes it will not be that great, but I'll walk away from it, or I'll come back in a day or two and I'll be like, okay, I've got something better here. And so I'm never afraid to sort of rework my story, have something sharper. And sometimes it's just a word or two that pops in. It's, oh, that's a better word, and that's a funnier word. And I'll put that in too. So I'd never say, for dialogue, just like whatever comes out is what it's going to be, because sometimes that changes too. So, but yeah, totally, like study movies, study books. And I think that's how we learn to write characters as well, right? Watching movies and watching TV, it's like, oh, like that's a character I'd like to write someday. So, well, if that's a character you want to write someday, how does that character speak? I mean, I'm not saying copy that dialogue, but you get the idea of what is something typical they would say or not say, right? It would have to fit them and the situation as well.
And kind of branching off of that dialogue, the story is written between like two POVs, Zora and Luke. Did you always see it as the two POVs in your head, or did you ever consider doing it just from Zora's perspective? Or
I love writing from dual POVs. I love reading it and I love writing it too. To me, it's always fun to get into both characters' heads, so that way you can see, or that way you know what they're both feeling about each other, even if they can't say it out loud, and even if they can't express it in a non-toxic way sometimes. So I think it's really fun to write dual POVs. I really love writing male POV. I think it's really fun because there's always a little bit of me in the female character, right? I'm writing from the female perspective, but to get to write from his perspective, I think is just amazing. I think it's a joyride. It's so much fun. So yes, this book was always going to be dual POV. It is short, and it's a little bit more of a challenge to do with a novella compared to a novel, because you've got a limited amount of time. So half the book is from him and half of the book is from her, sort of back and forth. But I think that, like with any story, you're building on it with every chapter. So as long as the story is advancing, I think it still works from both perspectives being told at the same time. And I think it's a lot of fun because you're hoping both characters end up in the same place at the same time. They're not always on the same path at the same time, right? As long as they get there at the end. So I think it's a really fun way to tell a story.
And as somebody who had to judge it, that was something that really stood out to us too, was the dual point of view being executed so well in a novella format, which, like you said, can be quite difficult to do. And also just the fact that there's a lot of different things going on with each character individually. Like the whole story isn't really all about their connection to each other. It's a big part, but they both have their own separate personal struggles that they're going through, and having the dual perspective really gets you in the head of the characters. And like I said, Luke at the beginning, you might not love him, but with the help of a POV and his POV, you can get a little bit more insight into why he reacts certain ways, or why he says certain things to Zora.
You build the empathy for the character that way, right? Like he's going through something, she's going through something, neither of them know about it. So you build empathy, you understand a little bit more about their motivations. So I think as a reader, it's a real treat to be able to jump back and forth between them. And then I think you're really shipping them as a couple. whether or not they're ready for it or whether or not they realize it, that they're going to end up together. I think it's like, oh yeah, these two belong together. They fit together. So I think I love dual POV. I can't say enough about it. It's interesting for me to write. I think honestly, I would be bored writing one character for a whole project. So it's fun. It's like writing two novels in one, really.
Yeah, and you get the opportunity to play with both characters a lot too, right? And really flesh them out and really create just strong, memorable characters that people are going to think about and look back at and reread and ship, like you said. So I think, that was definitely accomplished for sure. So we talked a little bit about you visualizing the characters and character description, and you said that you like to kind of keep it open to interpretation. You don't normally include a ton of character descriptions in your works because of that. So the official cover for this title was revealed last week, and we were all extremely hyped for that. Were you excited to see your characters come to life? Like, what was your first reaction of that?
No, I loved it. And I thought, wow, I mean, you guys were really paying attention to the details, and that really wowed me. Yeah, it was great. It was super exciting. It was a cover like I've never had on any one of my books. But it suited the story so perfectly. I got all the feels from it. So I hope other people get a good idea of what's under the cover, because to me, it just nailed it. I thought it was great. I'm so glad you guys are excited too.
Yeah, for sure. And for listeners, that we did include a polar bear on the cover. There is a polar bear on the cover.
Had to include a polar bear. Yeah, as someone like outside of the process and everything, I was so excited when Jess showed it to me, because I was like, it's the perfect like holiday rom-com cover. It's very cool. Yeah.
And the colors are great. Like it's like hot and cold kind of colors mixed together. And it was great. It's got the northern lights in there. It's got the snow. It's got the polar bear. And it's got, the feeling between the two characters, right? Like you can instantly see there's tension between them. So without knowing anything about it, I think it's great. I love it.
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked it out yet, definitely go take a look before this title goes on sale on November 1st.
And Barbara, can you tell us a little bit about what your experience has been like with the Kobo Originals team and kind of with this whole process? Because it has been a speedy one, going from like concept to book release so quickly.
It's been fantastic. Well, I'm not even sure where to start, because it's really been working with a dream team, to be honest. Everyone has been so welcoming and so supportive and encouraging through the whole thing. But it does seem like a dream in a way, because it happened so fast. I mean, the contest was over middle of August, and I think I knew within 3 weeks that my story had been chosen. And really, we hit the ground running. It was great. I had an editor assigned to me to do a round of edits. So we worked on the story a little bit, but in the meantime, I mean, we prepped for this podcast, and there's been other marketing initiatives underway, and then you guys are working on the cover. I mean, there's been so much stuff behind the scenes. I'm sure I don't even realize it's been going on, but it's just been like incredible. It's been really such a great experience, just an awesome team. Jessica is so great. She's she's always there and helpful and communicative. And as an author, just coming in and not knowing what to expect, I've just been treated like I won the prize of a lifetime. And that's really how I feel. So I'm so happy and feel so lucky.
Oh, thank you. That sounds really sweet. Thank you so much for saying that. But like, you've also been a dream author to work with, like to turn around edits in such a quick time. And you are also very available, which really helps with this whole process, especially with a very abbreviated timeline. It's just been great to work with, and you are obviously extremely talented and very good at what you do. So you come off extremely natural, and like you've been doing this forever, since you were a kid, like you said.
Well, that's funny. Well, again, I think we were just meant to be a team, right?
Of course. It's meant to be kismet.
That's right.
Well, I can't wait for everyone to see the book magic that you guys have brought to life. So Jess, correct me if I'm wrong, but it comes out November 1st for everyone to read.
Yes, November 1st, right in time for our holiday season, fresh off of Halloween. So we can put that behind us and just think Christmas after that.
But I just want to mention that Hallmark already has their Christmas movies out. So it's never too early if anyone's thinking holidays. It's available for pre-sale.
Yes, 100%. Go take a look at it now. Take a look at that cover. You can pre-order it and it will show up in your library first thing November 1st.
Yes, I can't wait for everyone else to read it. And Barbara, where can our listeners find you online?
Online, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Threads. You can find me on Goodreads. I'm all over the place. My website is barbarakellyn.com.
Perfect. Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us, Barbara. It was so fun talking to you about polar opposites, and I can't wait for everyone to read it.
Oh, thanks, Laura and Jessica. It's just been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks so much, Barbara. It's great to check in with you again, and I cannot wait for next week.
Me neither.
It's going to be awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. We're here today with Jessica Khadoo from the Kobo Originals team. Jess, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a bit about the Kobo Originals team and your role in the team?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Jessica Khadoo. I am the manager of original content for English language. And I've been at Kobo for about 4 years now and been in this role for about 2. And we are basically Kobo's in-house digital publisher. We're mainly publishing commercial fiction in both mystery, thriller, and romance genres.
What's your favorite part of your role in the team? Like, what do you enjoy working on the most?
Honestly, this is like the dream job for me. Realistically, there's so much that's going on in any given day. And the idea that I just get to wake up and work on books has really been the best part about this job. I love so I handle everything really from like acquisitions all the way to production to post-production stuff. So that means meeting with authors and talking to them about their really great book ideas or series ideas and how that would fit into our overall catalog. And then also once, acquiring a series that we think will do really well on our platform, I then look into editors, look into cover designers, start coming up with a bit of a marketing strategy and contacting some of our internal teams. So like PR and marketing and our social team as well to really make sure that we have all the support that we have for new releases. And then post-release, just making sure that our titles are really visible. So making sure they're getting that social acknowledgement and being really visible to our readers so they know where exactly to find our books.
Nice. And as a former Kobo Originals team member here, Jess used to be my manager. It's so cool to see Kobo Originals continue to grow, which brings us to that Kobo Originals recently ran a romance novella contest. So where did the idea for this writing contest come from?
So we have teams in both Netherlands and France, and they have done writing contests historically in the last couple of years. And it's been really, really fruitful for them and a big success. And for me, my main goal for this contest was to just grab a bunch of new talent and get some samples in of Canadian writers. What are they writing? Reading through some of the really great entries and getting a good feel for what is actually being produced and written in our own country versus other countries, which is something that I'm really looking into as manager of original content and focusing on Canada a lot. It's being able to look at the pool of talent that we have homegrown and really trying to elevate those voices and give them a platform and give them some visibility.
Were there any obstacles you ran into while setting up a contest like this? Because like you said, we've had them in Europe before, but this is the first time we've done one in Canada. So were there a lot of things that you learned from that you'll take into a contest in the future, or how did the process go?
Oh my gosh, great question. Honestly, so I was warned before even putting this on, and when I first proposed this to sort of the greater team, that it was going to be a lot of work. It's a really big project to undertake. And I think the one thing that not that I didn't realize, but something that really stood out to me was that running a contest is a full year project. There are lots of phases. There's lots of things to do in each phase. So you've got your pre-contest phase where you're getting all the legal details sorted out, talking to our internal lawyer, making sure that we're covering all the bases there. And then there's the structure of it. So the submissions are open. How are we going to gather those submissions? How are we going to vet those submissions? And then how are we going to judge them? And that was really difficult because since this was the first year we ran it in Canada, we really had nothing to go off of on like how many submissions that we could possibly get, how many judges or reviewers we would need to read through all of these submissions. So that was a really challenging part for us to try and sort of figure out on the fly. And for our submissions, it was going pretty well in the beginning. It was a two-month window. So we were getting, a couple submissions every couple of weeks. And I had this moment where I was like, if we get 20 submissions, I think that's a success. I'll be really happy with us and our effort and with the exposure, because we didn't use any sort of external tools or advertising really to help us with this. A lot of this was organic Kobo posts and visibility through KWL, through our own Kobo social channels. So we really didn't know where it was going to go. And then in the last really like 2 days, it went from 40 to 80 to 150 submissions. So we were really at the end there kind of running around, trying to figure out, okay, now we have 150 submissions. How are we going to get all of these judged in a 2-week period of time? So that was something that was really hard to kind of figure out how we were going to handle that sort of on the fly. But I am really happy to say that every submission was read by at least one person. So I can't thank our whole team enough for spending the last couple of weeks of their summer reading some holiday novellas, which is probably the last thing I want to be reading at that point in time. But yeah, and then after that process, then it's the whole pick the winner and then the whole production process after that. So we have a winner. Now we got to go through editing, find a cover designer, and produce the book all within 2 months. So it's a full year project. It is a lot of work, but very worth it.
Yeah, what has that process been like, kind of like speed producing everything? Because usually you guys have a lot more time to work on each book.
It was crazy. I was nervous for most of it, to be honest with you. The contract agreement part went over very easily, so that was really great. I already sort of had an editor in mind for the project. So talking to that editor and getting them sort of vetting them a little bit and getting them prepared for our timeline ahead of schedule was really valuable. And then the cover design, that was also a nervous part because depending on your designer that you want, they could be really busy. It is the season for holiday romances, so they're working on a lot of those covers already. So it was just a lot of, I think, good luck too.
You keep answering my questions before I can ask them, but I'm going to use that as a
synergy. It's the synergy that we have, Vanessa.
I'm going to ask about the cover because I always think the cover design process is so fun. So what went into that? What were you thinking you wanted the cover, illustrated, stock photos, whatever? So what did you think going into the cover design? And we love the way it came out. So.
Yay. So we've come out with a couple of holiday romances already in the mistletoe motive and Wrapped Up in You. So those had the illustrated / vector cover design that I really wanted to maintain, just kind of thinking about our holiday collection as a whole and thinking about all those covers and how they would all look together when they were displayed together on the site. So I wanted to continue along with that, and also doing some market research and seeing that is really where the strongest holiday novels really shine is in their covers. So I wanted to maintain that. Working with Barbara, who's the winner, I was fortunate enough to be one of the people to read Barbara's story in one of the first rounds. So I was kind of familiar with the story already. And part of my judging process when I was going through was thinking about how would I do a cover for this book if this was the winner. So I was kind of already thinking about that. And Barbara's story, which I can't wait for everybody to read, has a lot of really great moments that we could have pulled from to create the cover that we did. So that was sort of my process. And then reaching out to cover designers, I was looking at a couple covers that I liked that were out there right now and sourcing some designers through that. And fortunately, our designer, Lila Selle, was able to produce this cover in kind of record time and pretty easily. So we're really happy about that.
It's such a great cover. I can't wait for everyone to see it when the book is out. I was wondering, do you plan to host any similar writing contests in the future, maybe for other genres? Because we have definitely seen some requests on the Kobo Reading Life social channels for more contests.
Yes. Writers, I have been informed of all of the inquiries about running another contest, and that is definitely something I am looking into. But as I said, it is a really, really long con project. So it's something that, after running my first one, I've learned a lot about it. Us as a team, we've learned a lot about it too. So I want to take some time to kind of process that, come up with some more guidelines and a bit more of a detailed process that's going to help us for like the next contest going on. But I've got some ideas on, maybe mystery thriller this time around or anything like that. So stay tuned.
And you answered my next question, Jess. I was going to ask what changes or improvements you would make for any future ones.
Yeah, great. Changes or improvements. Start earlier. Start recruiting readers or evaluators earlier as well. I think now that I've set up the groundwork for contests as a whole. So I think just me in general, I am way more prepared on like the steps and how to follow them and what needs to happen A, B, C, and D in order to get us somewhere faster or more organized. But I need to really shout out my coordinator, Jacqueline. She was amazing and an amazing help in just coordinating all of sort of the behind the scenes, like evaluation stuff and really keeping evaluators on top of their game and making sure that they were putting the reviews in and rating everything. So it takes a village. Like your team as well, the KWL team really helped with pushing this contest on your guys' channels and really making sure your authors knew that this contest was going on and encouraging them to submit and ask questions and answer questions. So realistically, I think the main thing for me now is just I've gotten a lot more clarity on how long it takes to do this type of contest. And I think I'm better set up now to make sure that we're not running around as much and figuring things out on the fly.
Yeah, well, I think you guys did a great job for figuring a lot of stuff out on the fly. And yeah, I'm sure the next contest will be even bigger and better. But talking a little bit more about this one, can you tell us what's kind of stuck out to you most about the winning story, which is Polar Opposites by Barbara Kellyn, and what readers can expect from the book?
So Barbara, this is the first time I've read her. She has a couple other contemporary romance books that she has published. What really stood out to me in this story, was the Canadian setting. So it's set in Churchill, Manitoba, a unique setting as well, not a place that I think a lot of people are familiar with. So I think after reading the story, people are going to be intrigued and probably look it up. There's this whole overarching story about polar bears and their livelihood and the impact of global warming on that community, but also on the species and the people who live there. And the story really was just, even though it has a bit of a more serious sort of theme happening in the background, she manages to keep it light, fun. Her dialogue is so catchy and witty and snappy. And Luke and Zora, our two main characters, feed off of each other so well. And they're in this kind of natural rivalry where Zora is the journalist who's been sent out to Churchill, Manitoba to write an article about global warming and polar bears. And Luke is sent there as a freelance photographer to go take pictures for her article. And there's this push and pull and back and forth of what makes a good story. Is it a great photo that makes a good story, or is it a great article that's accompanied by a strong photo? So there's a lot of that going on, and there's a little bit of steaminess, and there's a little bit of banter, and there's a little bit of life-threatening situations. So there's a lot going on in there.
What more can you ask for?
Really?
Honestly, I'm very excited to read this because I read the synopsis and thought, there's polar bears in Manitoba, so that's really exciting. Can't wait to
yeah, and a lot of people are like, where's Manitoba? So
yeah, that's true. Everyone outside of Canada is like, where's Manitoba? Polar bears. But yeah, it was really fun to read, and I'm excited for everyone else to read it too and to see the cover.
And Barbara is amazing as an author, and just I'm sure you guys are going to hear her. She's just a really great person to talk to, and I'm really excited for readers to be introduced to her writing if they haven't heard of her before.
Yeah. When will Polar Opposites be released?
Actually, in about a week and a half. So November 1st, we're just hitting you right after Halloween. As soon as the clocks change to November 1st, this book will be available, much like all your other Christmas stuff, in stores.
Perfect. Well, we can't wait for everyone to read it.
So in doing this contest, do you have any advice for authors on what they should be submitting and what you're looking for from them?
Just in general, to Kobo Originals?
Best forward manuscript, or what they can do to catch your eye?
Great question. So like I said before, we are looking to publish commercial fiction, so in the mystery, thriller, and romance genres. And what we're really looking for is unique, diverse stories and series. We love a good series as well, especially for Kobo Plus, which I haven't dropped Kobo Plus yet, but that's a big part of our strategy, is to help increase the types of content that is going into Kobo Plus and really attracting Kobo Plus readers. And series is definitely a big aspect or ask by those readers. And for us, like, love contemporary romance, love to take a little bit more of a risk with some other sort of niche subgenres. You know, we've gone into paranormal romance, and we are doing maybe a little bit of some sports romance coming up, and fantasy romance as well. And for mystery thriller, I'm really looking for anything there. Cozy mysteries are always great, especially in series form. Police procedurals, we do have a couple of those series that do really well for us. So really anything in those genres, I'm always willing to take a look at and have a discussion on. So if you think you have a manuscript that you're ready for us to read, please send it on by. I'm sure you guys will include our email somewhere. Just shoot us a message and your manuscript, and we'll take a look and take it from there.
Okay. I'm excited to see what everyone sends in. You kind of hinted a little bit, but can you tell us about anything else upcoming with Kobo Originals?
So we've got a pretty big slate pretty much till the end of the year and all of next year already. We are filling up that production calendar, which I'm really excited for. And you can find a lot of great stuff from us. So like I said, a lot of different romance subgenres, contemporary. We also have some like contemporary women's fiction, what Jess released with Somewhere Along the Way by Anna Gomez. So we're trying to kind of hit up a lot of what our readers are looking for. Next year, to look out for a lot of our translations to come through. So we're really focusing on translating a lot of our successful original titles that were published in Dutch and in French and bring them to our English language readers. We've got a lot of great content coming out of those territories. So we definitely want to jump on that. And again, all in a mixture of subgenres from the romance and mystery thriller genres.
And do you have a project that you want to shout out that maybe readers might have missed? And I know it's probably hard for you to pick just one. It's like asking you to pick a child, but
I'll do recency bias just because I'm working on them right now. But I just dropped the name for Anna Gomez's Somewhere Along the Way, which is a standalone contemporary fiction / women's fiction. It's got a little bit of romance in there, but it's a really beautiful story about a woman who has recently lost her father and has never known her mother, thought her mother was never in the picture, and then finds out that she's actually alive and in an institution out in California. And she embarks on this long distance road trip across the country to go find her and meet her for the first time. And along the way, she has some letters from her parents that she reads throughout her journey, and also finds a companion to go along with her. And they just kind of work through both of their lives at that point. And as they get to the West Coast, they need to make a difficult decision on what they're going to do next and where each other fits into each other's lives. So I definitely recommend that story. I have heard, and I agree, that some people are needing some tissue boxes while they're reading through that. So just be warned. And we just came out with our last book in the Moonstone Pack series. So that's a paranormal wolf shifter, perfect for this time of year series. And it's the final book. So if you are a Kobo Plus reader and you are looking to jump into a new series, definitely look for that. And that's by Margot Bond Collins.
If I may give my original, The Lingering Dark was a great book.
Yes.
If you love fantasy romance, definitely check that out.
Yes, sapphic fantasy romance, by the way.
And we'll link to all of this in the show notes so everyone can check them out. Jess, can you tell us where writers can stay informed about everything Kobo Originals and working with your team and more writing contests?
Sure. So as I mentioned, you guys will share our general email box. So if you have any questions, want to know anything more about us, or have a manuscript or a series idea that you want to talk to us about, please feel free to reach out to us in there and we will get back to you. And we also have our Kobo Originals landing page, which you guys can also link to as well. And then we update that constantly with our new titles. So definitely go to that page if you're looking for any of or all of our catalog.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jess. This has been great talking to you, and can't wait for everyone to read Polar Opposites.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're interested in picking up Barbara's books, we will include links in our show notes. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're looking for more tips on growing your self-publishing business, you can find us at KoboWritingLife.com. Be sure to follow us on social media. We are at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook and Twitter, and at kobo.writing.life on Instagram and Threads.
This episode was hosted by Vanessa Salemi and Laura Granger, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robotham. Our theme music is composed by Tearjerker, and thanks Barbara and our extra co-host Jess for joining us this episode. If you're ready to start your new publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.